Welcome everyone to this session during the storage track of Azure IaaS Day. I am Carl Rautenstrauch. I'm a principal program manager with the Azure storage team, here to talk to you today about migrating your NAS data to Azure. And I am broadcasting from my home office and pandemic safe house here in North Florida. So thank you for joining me and for hopefully enjoying my decor here at home. And we're going to start off with a quick view into our Azure storage portfolio. So I like to say that no matter what your application needs are from a storage platform, we can meet those needs. And we can do that through block storage in the form of our Azure Disk portfolio, object storage for those of you who need REST API access or a data lake in the cloud. And then finally, our file storage solutions, Azure Files and Azure NetApp Files, which give you SMB and NFS access for those traditional applications that need shared data platforms. Now, we're going to focus during today's session on the final two, on our object storage and on our file storage platforms, and most importantly, how you can begin using them, knowing that you have file storage in other locations. And really, file storage is generated by applications and users. So no matter what your use case is for adopting services in the Azure public cloud, you will need to bring files to support those. Whether you're moving an analytics platform, beginning the path towards AI and ML-based applications, moving your virtual desktop infrastructure to Azure, or just your server-based applications, I can guarantee that you have data on NAS platforms, or many of you in on-premises object storage platforms that will need to come with those applications. And the how to move that data is critically important, and that's what we're going to focus on here today. So why can't you just use embedded operating system tools or tools that we make available for every single file migration use case? Well, there are several reasons why they may not be the best solution, whether it's rsync in the Linux and Unix space, RoboCopy, or our own AZ copy or Azure Databox platforms. They're not always the best thing to meet your needs. I saw this myself as an IT pro. I had to move tens of terabytes to hundreds of terabytes of data at a time, and using professional tailor-made tools made my life significantly easier, especially when you're moving between disparate platforms. When you're not moving from one generation to another of a vendor's hardware, it can be really, really difficult to copy files en masse. So what these solutions bring to bear is security. They encrypt that data in transit. They give you fantastic monitoring of the activities, so you know how much longer you have to go, how far into the process you are. When errors occur, you're notified and you're given the opportunity to resolve them very quickly. And they're all built to move data quickly. They provide scale-out copy engines that you can deploy near your data to make sure it can move across the wire as quickly as possible. And they're automated. Configure them, set them to run, and then you don't need to intervene until it's time to perform that cutover from your old on-premises or cloud environment to Azure. So many reasons to use this software, to bring it into your process and make your life easier. But I do want to be clear that they're not necessary for every file migration to Azure. And I'm going to start with why you may not want to use solutions like this or not need to. And the first reason is the data type. So if you're looking to move data that resides on tapes today, these solutions cannot address that data, the solutions I'm going to spend the rest of the time talking about. Instead, you can use your existing backup software to recall from tape and write that to Azure. Well, what if you're not using backup software? If you have some other solution you've used to write that data to tape? We have a great partnership with a company called TapeArc that can help you extract that data from tape and load it into cloud storage. If you have less than 50 terabytes to move, it may not make sense to use these solutions. They do require setup, but they do require a little bit of a learning curve. So investing that time may not be worth it for less than 50 terabytes, but I don't want to make that a hard rule. One that is a hard rule is for databases and virtual machines that are stored on NAS. These are not the right solutions to move that rapidly changing individual file level data from one NAS platform to another. It's better to use database replication software or something like VMware's own storage vMotion to move from NAS on premises to NAS in Azure for those storage use cases. Where they do make sense is almost the opposite of everything that I just described. When you have more than 50 terabytes, you absolutely need a solution like this to help make that process a smooth one. If you are doing this as part of a larger migration project, it's great to have orchestration across the board and to be able to tie these things together and, again, make your life as simple as possible. And finally, when you do have the bandwidth to migrate over the wire, these are great solutions. They can help you fill that pipe. They also have solutions that make sure they don't fill that pipe when you don't need them to. And some of them can write to Azure Data Box. So if you want to use a combination of offline ingest and online ingest, they can help you meet those needs and use the best combination of scenarios for your particular environment. So let's take a look at what a file migration workflow should consist of when it's executed in a safe and proper manner. And it starts with step 1A, and that is understanding where in Azure you should be moving your data to. We've taken a lot of time over the last couple of years to compile resources to help our customers understand the SMB protocol options, the NFS protocol options, and our object and data lake storage options that are available to customers in Azure. So please take the time to review these assets and resources to understand what is the right platform and solution for you. You also want to take a look at the tools that are available. We do have partnerships with several strategic partners in this space. So let's call this step 1B, and this is evaluating the tools themselves, comparing them to see which one best meets your source environment, destination environment, and individual copy parameter needs. We have an exhaustive review of these solutions available for you. We've also worked with these partners to build videos showcasing exactly how their technology works. And we've also built getting started guides with them that provide you with the steps you need to deploy and begin using them for your file copy needs. Now, the next step in the process is to actually deploy these solutions, and they are available in the Azure Marketplace. So you can find them there by searching for file migration. Each one of these providers will have a contact me option, so you can learn more from them about their solution and perhaps get a training session to really hit the ground running once you actually deploy the copy engines and the management console. And those copy engines will need to be deployed on premises. So you'll have to have available server infrastructure to deploy them to. And the vast majority of customers deploy them on top of their VMware or Hyper-V infrastructure. They really don't need a dedicated physical server in order to function properly. And the management console, that's up to you. You can deploy that on premises. You can deploy that in Azure. Please do note that anything you deploy in Azure from a virtual machine perspective is a billable service. You will have to pay for that VM while it's running, providing that management console or the copy engine. Depending on your scenario, maybe the copy engines will reside in Azure as well. But keep that in mind through the deployment process. Now, the next step is to actually begin the migration itself. So this step is comprised of choosing my source system where my data resides currently, my destination system where I want to copy that file data to, setting my copy parameters like what to do if I'm copying, for example, data that belongs to an orphaned NTFS SID. What should I do with that? Who should become the new owner? And then kicking off the migration process. And this is a background activity that will copy while users are still leveraging the on-premises or cloud-based current production system and copying in the background. You have the ability to monitor that copy in the background. I mentioned one of the greatest virtues that these solutions bring to bear is the fact that you have an estimate of how much longer this copy activity is going to take and a percent complete status. That's a little bit different from what we're all used to with Windows File Explorer. And then the final phase, step 4, is to perform the actual cutover of your shares or exports to the new environment in Azure. And I do have to recommend to everyone that you do some testing before you perform that cutover. One, you should make sure that you never get rid of the original copy. That's just a belt and suspenders safety model that an old sysadmin recommends to everyone else. Make sure things have completed properly before getting rid of the original copy. So mount up those shares and exports, make sure that the security parameters, the ACLs translated over properly, and then move on to that cutover phase. And that cutover phase is something that you will be scheduling during a change window. That is going to require coordination with the application owners and the end users. So again, old sysadmin offering some advice there. And then finally, when the cutover is complete, you are going to migrate these shares or exports on the new target virtual desktops or virtual servers in Azure. Here in this example, I'm mounting a Azure NetApp Files volume that I have migrated content to from an on-premises NetApp system. So I'm a big believer in showing you the look and feel and experience. We've walked through the process, but let's take a look at a demo and see what this looks like in action. Okay, now we're going to take a look at one of the solutions that you saw during the presentation. We're going to look at Comprise and their intelligent data management suite. Now here they have really powerful capabilities that allow you to see things like potential cost savings by tiering some of your data to object storage versus copying it all between different file platforms. So they have powerful assessment and analyzation capabilities. They also support, obviously, migrating files between disparate sources, replicating files between disparate sources if you want to use this solution for DR, and lifecycle management to make sure that you can keep the right data on the right cost and performance tier over time. Really, really powerful suite here. And we're going to look at now where it all begins, and that is adding in the existing file environments that you have, the ones that you're considering migrating to Azure. So you can see Comprise has a really robust list of arrays that they support. And we're going to quick go down the path of adding a clustered data on tap system. I can either add the entire cluster and look at the resources there, or just a specific storage virtual machine and restrict my view to that point. You can see I've got quite a few different sources added here already. Now we're going to take a look at targets, and targets are object storage targets for tiering. Well, let's go ahead and add a Microsoft Azure Blob Storage account, or start down that process anyway, where I would need the name, the destination container within that account, the storage account access key, and to choose the default tier that this data would live on. And this is a capability I really like, which is to keep the files in their native format, so I can then make them available to Azure services like Azure ML. You can also chunk and compress them to make the storage a little more efficient if you want to use this as an archive. And now we're going to take a look at the cost modeling and the analysis. So these values are ones that you populate based on your pricing from Azure. You can compare that to the pricing for your on-premises environment, and you know exactly what your savings will be, really for you, for the dollars that you pay for this. And then you can also model all of the migration activity and throttle the migration activity based on a percentage of bandwidth that you have, you want to make available to these tiering and migration activities. And I love this view as we look across the types of files that we have, the size of those files, who in our user base is consuming that space, which departments in that user space is consuming all of my disk capacity, and then what system is most full. Where should I start with migrations? All of these things are available to you after you run the initial assessment and analytics after adding the shares. So now that we know what we have, let's go ahead and begin a migration. And that migration all starts by adding in a source and target pairing. We'll take a look at that here in a second. Okay, so here I'm going to choose my source. In this case, I'm going to migrate from an on-premises SMB file server I have. We're going to choose a target. Azure Files will work. And then I see those warnings there, things I need to consider. I can go ahead and read more about that. And once I get my source and destination, I need to provide a friendly name so I know exactly what this is when I look back at that table containing all of my migration activities. And I get to set a couple of settings here. Of course, very, very important to preserve the ACLs. I absolutely want to do that, keep that one on. And then I start my migration. And it will pop up here along with the two pre-existing ones that I had. I can go ahead and choose from a variety of activities, including pausing it. If, let's say, we have network congestion, I can pause and resume later. Start final iteration, that is when I'm getting ready to perform the cutover. We're going to take a look at some of the details here on the progress of these jobs. There's an incredible amount of detail for every one of the activities. Of course, you can refresh at any time and see how far along it is, how things are moving. Let's go ahead and look at the details for this particular job. And there we go. I can see how much data has been moved in each one of these iterations after the baseline, get an idea of what my change rate is, how many files, how much data changes on a regular basis. And then when I am ready to go during that controlled window, I can go ahead and start my cutover, and we're done. All right, great to share that demo with you. I love putting my hands on keyboard and mouse and actually using these solutions. Another great part of my job in working with partners. I do want to highlight a few last things before we part ways today. One is, if you're like me, you don't always necessarily know who is using a file share or an NFS export. I ran into this as an IT admin a couple of years ago. I had a mainframe application that was connecting to one of my NFS exports that I had no idea existed or was using my environment as the Unix admin in that way. So fortunately, we provide a tool that can help. Azure Migrate has a dependency mapper capability that allows you to run and look for open ports in use on servers in your environment. So you can find those SMB protocol and NFS protocol connections that you may not know had existed in servers in your environment. So a great way to avoid that call to the tech support desk down the road after you perform that cutover. And really, if you need help during a migration, there are many resources that can help. I encourage you to go and take a look at the Azure Migration and Modernization Program. Not only do we have SIs that can help, but we have Microsoft experts as well as part of our AMP program that can help you with not just your file migration, but server and database migration, and really any considerations that you have in your journey to Azure Cloud. And then once again, we've built a lot of resources over the last year and a half to help you determine what is the best SMB protocol, NFS protocol, object or data lake storage solution for your needs, and even educate you on what object and data lake storage are, if those are things you're unfamiliar with. So please take advantage of the URLs that I've embedded here, spend a few minutes and read up on these solutions, and you'll be better for it as you're planning your journey to public cloud. So finally, I'd like to say thank you for your time today. I've really enjoyed delivering this session, recording these demos. Can't wait to interact with you all going forward on the tech community and in person going forward as we get back to in-person events. Thank you very much for your time. Take care.